After 3 years of obsession, he had sold his house and car, losing millions in savings while his wife left him for another man. His parents had cut ties with him, and only then did he realize the harsh truth. Fishing had truly ruined his entire life. Liu Yaqiong had learned this lesson over 3 generations, and just as he was ready to give up fishing forever and return to a normal life, he unexpectedly bound with a fishing system that offered him 3 distinct career paths. The first option was to become a competitive angling master. The second was to open his own fishing ground, becoming a black pit pond owner, and the third was to be a lonely, casual fisherman. Considering that becoming a master takes too long, and only a fool would choose to be a lonely angler, he decisively chose to become a pond owner. By becoming a pond owner, he could not only earn system rewards, but also profit from the 300 million anglers nationwide. The system congratulated him on his choice, instructing him to first acquire a fishing ground of his own in order to unlock a special beginner's reward. Hearing this requirement, he frowned. After 3 years of fishing, he was nearly penniless. His family was gone, and with only 3,000 yuan left in his account, he couldn't even afford a decent fishing rod, let alone a pond. After thinking for a long time, he remembered the Yulong village reservoir back in his rural hometown. It seemed no one had leased it yet, so he immediately drove to Yulong village, but the sight of the reservoir left him stunned. The once massive reservoir had dried up, leaving barely 3 or 4 acres of water. It looked as desolate as a wild, muddy pit, though the surrounding mountains and scenery were still quite pleasant, to be honest. He figured it might still work as a private fishing pond, so he immediately called village chief Liu to discuss the leasing terms. However, Chief Liu warned him that the reservoir leaked year-round and might dry up completely any day. The chief advised him not to waste his money, but just as he was about to give up, the system's voice rang out again. The system suggested he use the Yulong village reservoir as his base, noting that its upgrade functions would fix the leaks. Upon hearing this, he called Chief Liu back, bracing himself to take the plunge and commit to the lease. We see him signing a 10-year lease for the reservoir, and Chief Liu, moved by his sincerity, even kindly waived the first year's rent. As soon as the contract was signed, the system chimed in to congratulate our host on successfully owning his very own fishing ground. A quick survey revealed that the current water surface area was exactly 2.88 acres, currently devoid of any fish. When asked if he wanted to open the beginner's gift pack, he immediately confirmed. The system congratulated him on receiving a stock of hemiculture, yellowfin, and dummy goby. The fry were released, and a new mission appeared. He was to invite anglers to Yulong village for 30 yuan per hour, with a minimum requirement of 5 hours per session. A perfectly reasonable request, or so the system thought. As long as one person paid and fished, he would earn a chance to upgrade the grounds. But after hearing the rewards and the task, Liu Yaqiong felt like he was about to lose his mind. You see, hemiculture, yellowfin, and dummy gobies are universally known as the 3 pests of the fishing world. Forget charging 30 yuan an hour. Even if it were free, no self-respecting angler would show up. He angrily complained to the system, asking how on earth he was supposed to play this game when even ghosts wouldn't come to fish for those 3 species. The system calmly explained that completing this task and upgrading the grounds would unlock much richer fish species later on. It also reminded him that the reservoir currently only supported system-produced fish. Any other species simply wouldn't survive. Furthermore, he was warned not to cheat, or he would be cursed with 10,000 years of empty nets. Seeing all his paths blocked by this stubborn system, he braced himself and called his good friend, Bai Yunhai. Brother, I've leased Yulong Reservoir and opened a fishing ground. It's only 150 for 5 hours. Come support me. Bai Yunhai's voice on the phone was filled with pure disbelief. Are you serious, Limu? Did you hit your head on a door? That reservoir leaks every day and has no fish, yet you want to charge me 150? I don't believe you for a second. Seeing that Yunhai wasn't biting, he continued to lure him in, claiming he had just released 1,000 pounds of fish that very day. He promised giant black carp that would snap a rod in half, but Bai Yunhai wasn't falling for it, not even for a second. Limu, we're brothers, so stop trying to hustle me, Yunhai replied. With the water level at Yulong Reservoir right now, 1,000 pounds of carp would probably drink the place dry. I need to find a real fishing spot, so I'm hanging up. And just like that, Yunhai ended the call. Limu felt like he was in real trouble. If he couldn't even trick his best friend, who else could he possibly convince to come fish here? As he stood by the water with a massive headache, the village widow, Yang Yulan, approached the reservoir to greet him. Limu, it really is you. Chief Liu told me you were back to raise fish, but I didn't believe it. Have you had lunch yet? Why don't you come over to my place to eat? Now, Yulan was the dream woman of every man in Yulong village, but at this moment, Limu couldn't find any interest in food. He gave her a bitter smile and offered a polite greeting. Sister Yulan, it's been a long time. Seeing his gloom, she grew concerned. What's wrong, Limu? You look like you just went through a terrible breakup. He simply shook his head at the suggestion. I don't even have a girlfriend, sister, he sighed, before explaining the entire predicament regarding his new fishing ground. Yulan let out a soft laugh. I thought it was something serious. You're just worried that no one will come to fish. Well, I'll be your very first customer today. The only problem is I don't know how to fish, and I don't have any gear. Limu's face lit up with sudden hope. Sister Yulan, are you truly willing to fish at my place? It's only 150 Isn't it? She replied, immediately pulling out her phone to scan the code and transfer the payment. Once the money arrived, he hurried to his car for a rod, set up a fishing platform, and opened a bag of bait to begin her lesson. He prepared a 3.6-meter rod for her, adjusting the float to a standard setting for a long-line cast. Then, he patiently taught her how to make her very first cast. Almost immediately, the float on the water's surface bobbed twice. "You've got a bite, sister. Pull the rod up," he urged. Yulan lifted the rod with a quick, sharp motion. And there they were, a hemiculture and a dummy goby, both wiggling on the hooks. A double catch, right from the start. To a seasoned angler, these small fish wouldn't cause much excitement. But for Yulan, who was fishing for the very first time, it was a thrill. She turned to him, beaming. "Limu, look, I caught 2 fish at once. Fishing really is fun." With that, Yulan excitedly cast her line a second time. This time, the moment it hit the water, the float vanished completely. At Limu's signal, Yulan raised the rod again, and once more, it was a double catch. "Limu," she asked with pure joy, "do I have a hidden talent for this?" She planned to catch a few more to fry up for dinner. Limu simply smiled and followed her lead, offering a warm nod of approval. He remarked that not only was she beautiful, but she was a natural at the sport. Hearing this praise, Yulan was as happy as a young girl. For a while, she was catching fish almost as fast as she could cast, seeing she had the hang of it. Limu stepped back to think about the reservoir's future operations. About 5 minutes later, however, Yulan let out a sudden cry. "Limu, come help me. The hook is stuck in my clothes." When he looked over, he froze in his tracks. The hook was snagged in a rather awkward spot right on her chest. He cleared his throat, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Sister Yulan, the hook has a barb. You should be able to pinch it and slide it out yourself." Yulan shook her head urgently. "I can't. I already tried, and it's stuck. Just come help me get it off. I want to keep fishing." With a slight blush, Limu had no choice but to step in and carefully unhook her clothing. Over the next few hours, the hook somehow kept finding its way back into Yulan's clothes, and he had to help her several more times. Soon, 5 hours had passed. The fish basket was teeming with over 100 hemiculture and goby. They were technically trash fish, but their size was staggering. Some were nearly half a pound, and even the small ones were substantial. A photo of this would surely shock any veteran angler. Yulan was incredibly excited looking at her haul. She immediately took about a dozen fish home to cook for dinner, even inviting Limu over for a drink. Since she had helped him complete his system mission, he wanted to show his gratitude and didn't refuse. Once she headed home to start cooking, the system chimed. "Congratulations, host. Mission complete. You have earned 1 upgrade for the reservoir water." The system offered a choice between upgrading the water area or the fish species. Considering the impressive size of the current trash fish, Limu realized he could use them to his advantage, but the reservoir's surface area was still a bit too narrow, so he decided to upgrade the water area instead. Once he confirmed his choice, the system immediately announced the upgrade was in progress. While simultaneously issuing the next management goal, he was tasked with inviting people to fish at Yulong Reservoir for 30 yuan per hour, with a 5-hour minimum. As soon as 10 people paid and started fishing, he would earn another chance to upgrade the reservoir. The price remained the same, but the required number of customers had increased by 10. To be honest, he didn't think it would be a problem. Even if the reservoir only held common fish for now, their size was truly startling. Finding 10 anglers shouldn't be difficult at all. And so, he called Bai Yunhai, the tackle shop owner, once again. "Brother, help me promote Yulong Reservoir in your fishing groups. It's 150 yuan for 5 hours. See if you can send some people my way." Bai Yunhai, seeing this was the third call, asked seriously if Li Mu was truly committed to running this fishing spot. He promised to help promote it to his members. But then he asked what kind of fish were actually in the water. Li Mu, playing it a bit coy, simply gave a vague answer, saying only that there were definitely big fish to be caught, which, in a way, was true. After hanging up, he checked the time and saw it was still early for dinner. He decided to drive into town to buy some daily necessities and cleaning supplies. Since he was running the reservoir now, he couldn't keep commuting from the city every day. He planned to clean up the old family house to live in for now, at least until he made enough money to build a simple cabin by the water. He soon arrived at a general store in town, but just as he stepped out of his car, his attention was caught by a beautiful woman standing nearby. He recognized her immediately. It was Funying, the famous lure fishing influencer. Fishing has become incredibly popular lately, leading to a surge in tackle brands and a wave of fishing influencers across the internet. Some of these stars have tens of millions of followers, like the legendary Deng Gang. Of course, Teacher Deng is in a league of his own, being a professional competitive angler and a technical coach for the National Association. A true master of the craft, in other words. In every respect, he is the gold standard of the fishing world. Funying, on the other hand, is a prominent female influencer in the same circle. She specializes in lure fishing and was once a professional competitive angler, but she was unfortunately banned for life after violating competition rules. Although she now films purely for entertainment, her striking looks and physique make her one of the top female influencers in the entire industry. She currently boasts nearly 10 million followers on social media, with each of her videos averaging well over 100,000 likes. This is top-tier influencer territory. Li Mu immediately realized that if he could convince Funying to fish at his reservoir just once, his fame would skyrocket. With that thought in mind, he walked right up to her to say hello. Funying, I'm a big fan. I actually run a fishing ground nearby. It's very close. If you could film a video there, I guarantee it'll go viral. Why not come and give my place a try? Funying looked at him with a hint of curiosity. You guarantee it'll go viral? That is quite a bold claim to make, young man. Why don't you tell me what makes your fishing ground so special? Limu simply gave a knowing smile and replied mysteriously. If it's truly special, I shouldn't just tell you. You'll see for yourself. Besides, it's only a 10-minute drive from here. Funying hesitated for a moment. She had actually come out early today to scout locations for her next scripted video. She hadn't expected someone to approach her with an offer so directly. After a brief thought, Funying nodded and agreed to follow him. She called over her equipment truck and camera crew, asking them to reenact and record their initial meeting for her vlog. After that, they followed closely behind Limu's car as they headed toward Yulong Reservoir. Upon arrival, Limu was genuinely startled. The reservoir, which was originally less than 3 acres, had clearly expanded to over 10 times its previous size. The water now covered much of the previously exposed mountain basin. It seemed the system had completed the upgrade automatically while he was away. Combined with the backdrop of the mountains, the scenery was far more beautiful than before. Even Funying couldn't help but let out a sigh of admiration. The scenery here is truly impressive, she remarked. It's a bit too wild to look like a commercial fishing spot, though. But to be honest, that natural feeling is exactly what I need for my videos. Having said that, Funying decided right then and there to use his reservoir as her filming location. And so, our protagonist's plan to put his business on the map was officially in motion. She pulled out her phone and paid the 150 yuan fishing fee right in front of the camera, then began setting up her professional gear. As she started, Limu recorded the scene on his phone and immediately sent the clip to Bai Yunhai. Bai Yunhai replied almost instantly, clearly stunned that he had actually managed to invite a star like Funying to his reservoir. He promised to head over immediately, noting that with her there, even a 500 yuan fee would be a bargain. Limu simply chuckled. He asked Bai Yunhai to share the video in her fishing groups, and as expected, the community exploded with excitement. Over 500 anglers began tagging Bai Yunhai, desperate to find the reservoir's location. After all, the chance to fish alongside a beauty like Funying doesn't come often. Seeing the overwhelming feedback, Limu felt a surge of genuine excitement. It seemed the system's task of collecting fees from 10 people would be completed much sooner than he had anticipated. A little later, he received a call from Yang Yulan inviting him over for a meal. Upon arriving, he saw the table was already set. There was a plate of fried gobi and a fragrant bowl of river fish tofu soup waiting for him. But that wasn't all he noticed. Yang Yulan, who had been barefaced earlier, had specifically put on light makeup and a touch of perfume. To be honest, the atmosphere felt a bit different. She even brought out a bottle of fine liquor, but Limu politely declined, sensing where this might be heading. He explained that he shouldn't drink since many anglers were coming that afternoon, and he actually wanted to ask for her help. He offered to pay her to help guide the visitors at the intersection. Yang Yulan simply smiled at the mention of money. Limu, there's no need to talk about money between us, she said. If you need your sister-in-law's help, just say the word. She put the wine back in the cabinet and suggested they drink that evening instead, even mentioning he could stay the night. She noted she had plenty of empty rooms, a comment that made Limu's heart skip a beat. He quickly sat down to eat. Meanwhile, back at Yulong Reservoir, Funying had selected a 4.5-meter composite rod for her first cast. She meticulously set up her line with a gold hook and a float weighted specifically at 1.5 grams. After preparing her specialized bait with a bit of gluten for texture, she began her first cast to test the bottom. Next, she set her float to a 4-line up and 2-line down configuration. Once everything was ready, Funying quickly entered full fishing mode. However, after about half an hour, she began to feel that something was quite wrong with the reservoirs. Actual fishing conditions. It was enough to make anyone lose their temper, as she was catching nothing but common minnows, small gobies, and bottom-dwelling stone morocos. She wondered if these trash fish were the special feature she had been promised. Deep down, she felt certain she had been scammed by the owner of this fishing spot. Unable to hold back, Funying complained to her assistant, Xiaoli, that they had been tricked. She claimed there wasn't a single decent fish in the place. Xiaoli smiled wryly, suggesting that even if they were being scammed, this misfortune could be a great hook for their video. Funying gave a bitter smile and nodded, deciding to stick with it. She changed her tactics, trying to fish off the bottom with different bait, yet every single thing she pulled up was still just a dancing minnow or a stone morocco. She hadn't seen a single normal fish the entire time. To be honest, even the most patient person would reach their limit. Just as Funying decided to give up and demand a refund from the owner, she suddenly felt a heavy weight on her rod. The tension was so great that the rod began to bend significantly. This definitely wasn't a trash fish. With a look of pure joy, Funying raised the rod and began the delicate process of controlling the catch. Her assistant, Xiaoli, immediately grabbed the landing net. When Funying saw the tail break the surface of the water, she shouted in surprise, thinking it looked like a topmouth coulter. She wondered why the young man hadn't let her use lures earlier. However, as Xiaoli scooped the fish into the net, she voiced her doubts, telling Funying that this fish didn't actually look like a coulter at all. Funying reflexively brushed her off, insisting that at this size, it had to be one. She argued that as a lure fishing expert, she knew her fish, and told Xiaoli to just bring the net up so they could see. Xiaoli quickly hauled the catch onto the bank, but as Funying crouched down excitedly to remove the hook, she froze in utter disbelief. The fish in the net was actually a massive, 3-pound common minnow, a species that usually stays tiny. It looked remarkably similar to a topmouth coulter. From a distance, its body shape was almost indistinguishable from one. At this moment, Funying's emotions were incredibly complex. She felt like crying, yet she couldn't deny a certain sense of surprise. After all, she had never seen such a massive minnow before, and she could already imagine this video going viral. She wondered if this was the surprise the owner had mentioned. Meanwhile, her assistant Xiaoli pointed the camera directly at the giant minnow. Funying unhooked the fish and held it up, looking as if she might burst into tears. Addressing the camera, she told her followers she finally understood the owner's promise of a viral surprise. A minnow this big. She asked if they had ever seen anything like it. It weighed at least 2 or 3 pounds and was nearly 50 centimeters long. Funying quickly placed the giant minnow into her keep net and resumed fishing. She wanted to see if this reservoir held any other surprises. Meanwhile, we see the owner, Lin Feng, strolling leisurely back toward the fishing grounds. Along the way, he was still savoring the taste of the fish he'd had for lunch. Sister Yulan's cooking was excellent, certainly, but he suspected the meat quality was actually due to the system's upgrades. If that were true, then business would be much easier to manage. Most people avoid eating fish from commercial ponds because they taste like feed. As soon as he arrived, Funying began to complain, telling him he was a total scammer for leading her here. She grumbled that she'd paid 150 yuan just to catch minnows, stone morocos, and gobies in the mountains. Even though she had caught that giant minnow, she still felt a sense of disappointment deep down. So seeing him, she couldn't help but vent her frustration. Lin Feng, however, feigned shock at her words and told the beautiful Funying not to say such things. He insisted his reservoir was full of variety, suggesting she'd only caught small fry because she'd just started. Besides, he pointed out it was noon. There is an old saying that even immortals find it hard to catch fish at midday. Usually, only the small trash fish are biting then, while the real fish don't feed until later. To be honest, it was a fair point. Funying fell silent, unable to argue with his logic. Just then, she felt another strike and pulled up the line to find a double catch. One was a half-pound minnow, and the other was a 2-pound goby, both of them absolute monsters for their species. Funying was utterly stunned, while beside her, Xiaoli hurriedly raised the camera to capture the moment. Even Lin Feng, watching that goby, found himself jumping back in surprise. He couldn't help but think how terrifyingly large it looked. To be honest, it was a bit intimidating. He admitted he'd never caught anything that big in his own pond, telling the beautiful Funying she truly lived up to her professional reputation. Funying opened her mouth to reply, but a shout from the distance cut her off. Lin Feng turned toward the sound and saw a familiar face. It was Bai Yunhai, who had actually driven all the way from the county seat. Lin Feng waved to Funying and went to greet his old friend. He remarked on how fast the man had arrived, but Bai Yunhai didn't seem to hear a word, his eyes scanning the reservoir frantically. He demanded to know where Funying was, insisting he had to sit right next to her to fish. Lin Feng simply pointed toward her spot. Bai Yunhai looked ecstatic. He immediately grabbed his gear from the car, ready to rush over to Funying's side. However, Lin Feng grabbed him by the arm, reminding him that he hadn't paid the fishing fee yet. Bai Yunhai was instantly annoyed at the suggestion. He complained that after all their years of friendship, Lin Feng was actually going to charge him. Lin Feng just gave a cold snort in response. He told him that even between brothers, accounts must be settled clearly. Unless he planned to walk over his dead body, it was 150 yuan. The truth was, he needed to complete his system mission. Besides, Bai Yunhai had spent years tricking him into buying expensive rods at his shop. He had no idea how much money he'd made off Lin Feng over the years. So this 150 yuan fee was really just a drop in the bucket. Seeing Lin Feng's firm resolve, Bai Yunhai had no choice but to pull out his phone and scan the code. Once the payment cleared, he grabbed his gear and ran excitedly toward Funying. Just as he left, Lin Feng noticed something happening on the road below the reservoir. A steady stream of cars was heading straight toward them. He did a quick mental count and realized there were at least 20 vehicles. Down at the intersection, Yang Yulan was absolutely shocked while directing traffic. Yulong village had never been this lively before. Soon, a large crowd carrying fishing gear arrived at the grounds. After paying their fees, every single one of them crowded around Funying. It seems the allure of the #1 beauty in lure fishing is truly a terrifying force to behold. And today was only. If this were a weekend or after work hours, the crowd would likely be even larger. We see Lin Feng counting them up one by one. There were 36 fishermen in total, and their combined fees for the day already amounted to 5,400 yuan. He walked along the reservoir, feeling quite pleased with himself, but he soon noticed a major problem. Although the giant minnows, gobies, and sleepers were a surprise, with so many people fishing now, if they only caught those small species and nothing else, things would get difficult. Other fish were the issue. He worried that if they didn't catch any variety, these fishermen would start demanding their money back. To be honest, he couldn't blame them. Scrap fish are still scrap fish. After all, he knew this sudden burst of popularity was only temporary and certainly wouldn't last forever. Fortunately, his new business objective had already been exceeded. He just needed to wait for 10 people to finish fishing before upgrading. Once that happened, he could use the system to improve the fish species. But soon, the very problem he feared began to surface. A group of fishermen, including Bai Yunhai, began to question why the reservoir was full of nothing but minnows and other small fry. After paying a 150 yuan fee, they were annoyed that not a single proper fish had been caught. People were already starting to complain. Luckily, a few people managed to pull in 2-pound minnows or 4-pound sleepers, which momentarily distracted the disgruntled crowd. Furthermore, because Funying was still fishing patiently, the men kept their cool and didn't leave immediately. They were willing to wait. This continued until 4 in the afternoon, when Funying finally packed up her gear to head home. Seeing her leave, Lin Feng approached her. He called out to the beautiful Funying, asking if she was done for the day and even offering her extra time for free. She declined. Funying shook her head, explaining she had other things to do later and had already finished recording her video. It was time to go. He told her she was welcome back anytime, then casually asked her if the surprise and the potential for her video to go viral were real. Funying nodded happily, admitting there were indeed surprises and that the video would definitely be a hit once it was posted online. However, she asked if there were actually any other types of fish in his pond. Lin Feng immediately denied her doubts. Of course. He insisted there were plenty of other fish, claiming they just hadn't started biting yet. Funying simply gave him a knowing smile. She pointed out that with so many anglers, not one had seen a different fish. He stubbornly replied that if she didn't believe him, that was that. He insisted that when the other fish hit their feeding window, they'd practically jump out to bite. Funying just gave a light laugh and said her goodbyes. She left the fishing grounds, but Lin Feng didn't expect what happened next. As soon as Funying walked away, a large crowd immediately followed her lead. Originally, there were over 60 people staying to fish, but in the blink of an eye, the reservoir was left with only about 10 people. We see him realize that it wasn't just Funying's star power at work. The variety of fish in the water simply wasn't good enough yet. The anglers had already seen the giant minnows and sleepers, but with no sign of any other species, the novelty was wearing thin. These veteran fishermen were losing interest. If curiosity was the only thing drawing them in, they likely wouldn't bother coming back a second time. Sensing the urgency, he immediately checked with the system to see if his new business objective had finally been completed. The system responded quickly, confirming that he had indeed earned a new opportunity to upgrade the fishing grounds. When asked if he wanted to use it immediately, he didn't hesitate. He commanded the system to upgrade the fish species right then and there. The system began a random draw for the new species. A moment later, it offered its congratulations. He had unlocked the topmouth coulter. The upgrade was complete. Upon hearing the name of this specific fish, a look of pure joy spread across Lin Feng's face. You see, the coulter is one of the most prized catches for any serious angler. As a medium-sized species, it's in a completely different league than scrap fish. Usually, catching a 5-pound coulter is enough to make a fisherman ecstatic. If one manages to break the 10-pound mark, they'll practically be howling with delight. Beyond the sport, these fish are highly valuable due to their delicious, tender meat. To be honest, they are a delicacy in their own right. Pure wild ones can sell for nearly 100 yuan per pound. They are also a primary target for lure fishing, though there was one small catch. The Yulong village reservoir wasn't quite large enough for lures yet, so he would have to stick to traditional pole fishing for now. He grew even more excited knowing that these system-upgraded fish could reach their absolute theoretical growth limits. Things were finally looking up. He felt certain the fishing grounds were about to take off. However, just then, the system presented him with a brand new business task. The host was now required to invite people to fish at Yulong village for a fee of 100 yuan per hour with a 5-hour minimum. If 20 people paid and fished under these terms, he would earn yet another upgrade. It was a steep challenge, to say the least. After reviewing the system's new business task, Lin Feng took a sharp breath. At 100 yuan per hour, 5 hours would mean he would have to charge 500 yuan. Fortunately, with the coulter now in the reservoir, the price wasn't exactly cheap, but it wasn't outrageous either. He assumed that since the coulter were now in place, this group of veteran anglers would surely stick around and keep fishing. But as it turned out, the remaining dozen or so anglers were actually preparing to leave, prompting him to immediately step forward. He tried to persuade them to stay, noting their time wasn't up, but the dozen fishermen all had the same complaint. They told the boss that while the minnows were large, catching nothing but scrap fish simply wasn't interesting anymore. Despite his best efforts to convince them that other species were definitely in there, those 10-plus anglers left anyway. One after another, the fishermen departed until the entire reservoir was left with only Bai Yunhai and one 30-year-old man. At that moment, Yunhai started complaining, asking Lin Feng what kind of scheme he was running and calling the situation a total scam. He argued that a reservoir full of scrap fish was a waste of all the popularity Funying had brought to the place. Lin Feng gave Yunhai an annoyed glare, telling him to stop running his mouth and just focus on his own fishing. Yunhai took offense, claiming he was only looking out for him, and decided that if that was his attitude, he was leaving too. He began packing his gear to go home, even having the nerve to ask for a refund, which Lin Feng flatly rejected. Frustrated by his lack of catch, the young man grumbled his way to the back hills, helping himself to some plums and loquats. Still feeling unsatisfied, he spitefully pulled up several handfuls of wild leeks by the roadside before finally making his exit. Once Yunhai was gone, the last remaining man followed suit. In the blink of an eye, the bustling reservoir was a ghost town. While he had indeed earned 5,000 yuan today, thanks to Funying's influence, he knew such opportunities wouldn't happen every day. The silver lining was that Funying still had to post her video. Once that went live, the reservoir's popularity would likely surge again. He was certain that once the next wave of anglers caught the new cultist species, he wouldn't be able to drive them away. And so, he decided to spend the entire night fishing personally to test the activity levels of the newly added culter. He knew that if he could just land one giant culter, he could have Yunhai share the photo in all those fishing groups again. The popularity would surely skyrocket, so he immediately took his belongings back to the old house to prepare. As the saying goes, no bait means no fish. After finishing his setup, he planned to just settle for some instant noodles for dinner. But then, he received a call from Yang Yulan, who noted that all the anglers had left and invited him over to her place. She offered to cook him dinner herself, her voice over the phone sounding so sweet it made his heart skip a beat. He wondered if Sister Yulan truly just wanted to feed him or if she had something else in mind, but being too lazy to cook, he didn't refuse. Before long, he arrived at Yulan's home to find the table already spread with several hearty, delicious dishes. During the meal, he suggested paying Yulan 3,000 yuan a month to handle the cooking for him and the future anglers. He realized that once the reservoir's popularity grew, he would need to provide meals so the fishermen wouldn't go hungry. Upon hearing about the payment, Yulan immediately refused, insisting she was free anyway and could help him for nothing. However, feeling it wasn't right to take without giving, he insisted on a salary, and so, the matter was settled. After finishing dinner, he gathered his gear for the night fishing session, while Yulan watched him prepare to head out. He reassured her, explaining he was only going to test the fish density and told her to get some rest before heading out with his tackle. As he left her house and passed by her cornfield, he couldn't resist picking a dozen ears of fresh, tender corn. Fresh corn is essential for catching culter. After all, arriving at the reservoir, he began stripping the kernels into a tray. Looking at the large pile of bait, he felt tonight was going to be spectacular, a true fisherman's dream. If he could land a single culter weighing over 10 pounds for Yunhai to post, the reaction would be absolutely explosive. And if he managed to catch a 20-pound monster, it would likely set the entire Luoyuan County fishing community on fire. After all, places with culter that size are rare across the entire country, and his competitive spirit was now fully ignited. He was buzzing with excitement, but just as he began preparing his line, a motorcycle suddenly came racing toward him. A dark-skinned man carrying heavy fishing gear approached on a motorcycle and asked if he was the owner of this reservoir. He nodded and asked the man if he was there to fish at such an hour, to which the man gave a hearty laugh. The man told him not to call him uncle, explaining he was only 27, but years of fishing in the sun had aged him. He asked about the fees, leaving our protagonist stunned. The man's forehead wrinkles looked nearly as deep as his grandfather's. He seemed to have aged quite rapidly, to be honest, but deciding not to dwell on it, he told the man it was 100 yuan per hour. He added that 5 hours would cost 700, a price that caused the man to freeze in complete disbelief. The man asked what fish were even in there, and he explained there were only culter, with some likely weighing up to 20 pounds. He noted that fish could be sold back for 2 yuan per pound, though any single fish over 10 pounds had to be returned. The man paused to think, muttering that at only 2 yuan a pound, he would need to catch 50 pounds just to break even. At this point, it seemed the man was losing interest, and our protagonist began to feel a bit impatient with the negotiation. He told the man bluntly that those were the prices. If he trusted his skills, he could pay. Otherwise, he should just head home. He assumed the deal was dead, but to his surprise, the man simply laughed and decided to take the gamble. The man reasoned that since there were 20-pound culter, catching just one of those monsters would cover his entire investment. Determined to conquer the reservoir tonight, the man quickly scanned the code to pay his fees and get started. He set up right next to our protagonist's chosen spot and pulled out a box of live earthworms to use as bait. After hooking the live bait, the man looked over with a proud, knowing smile, feeling quite confident in his strategy. Our protagonist couldn't help but be amused. Usually, commercial fishing pits ban live bait because it is far too effective. Since earthworms are meat-based, they attract fish much better than standard bait, and the man thought he had found a clever loophole. He just smiled and nodded, though he did try to warn the man against using worms, offering him some free corn instead. But the man didn't listen, merely letting out a cold snort as he prepared to show the owner how a real pro fishes. The man warned him that to run a commercial pit, he had to be sharp, or he'd go bankrupt in no time. He simply shook his head. With a soft sigh, he told the man that since he'd been called a sore loser, there wasn't much left to say. But he set one condition. He explained that while the corn was free now, later he would charge 100 yuan per kernel. The man, naturally, didn't care at all. Waving a hand dismissively, the man claimed he was a high roller and proposed a bet. If he ended up needing that corn later, he would pay 200 yuan per kernel, swearing on his pride. Our protagonist just shrugged and let him get to it. He left the man to his own devices, and the fisherman immediately cast his line into the reservoir with a confident flick of his wrist. But just as he set the rod down and reached for a cigarette, his luminous float began to signal a bite. Things were moving fast. The man instantly gripped the handle of his rod, ready to strike at any second, his eyes locked onto the water with total focus. While staring at the float, he couldn't resist teasing our protagonist, claiming that with such active fish, he was definitely going to win big. Just then, the float vanished beneath the surface in a massive strike. With a low growl of excitement, the man jerked the rod upward. As he fought the fish, he confidently told our protagonist that based on his years of experience, this felt like a solid 3-pound coulter. A moment later, he scooped the catch into his net, but as he looked down at his prize, his expression of triumph completely froze. He stared in utter disbelief, swearing under his breath and wondering what on earth he had just caught, as it certainly wasn't a coulter. After a closer look, he gasped in shock, realizing he had somehow hooked a giant, overgrown hemicoulter, a common, pesky bait stealer. Our protagonist simply watched with a quiet smile, saying nothing, which only made the man's frustration boil over even more. The man demanded to know why he hadn't been warned about giant trash fish in the pit. He just grinned and replied that the man hadn't asked. Realizing he had no argument, the man went silent and continued fishing with his worms. To be honest, he should have reconsidered his bait. Every time he cast his line, he caught either a small hemicoulter or a bottom-dwelling goby, anything but the prized fish he was after. Fearing he was being played, the man desperately tried changing his technique, but no matter what he did, the small fish wouldn't leave him alone. It was as if they were glued to his hook, which wasn't surprising, as live worms are the absolute favorite snack of every small fish in the water. And so, when the older man insisted on using worms, our protagonist didn't object. He knew exactly what would happen next. After being tormented by trash fish for half an hour, the man finally walked over with a forced smile, asking to buy some corn. He complained that with worms, he couldn't even get his line down. Our protagonist just chuckled, reminding him of their earlier deal. He noted that while he could have given the corn away for free, the man had insisted on paying 200 yuan per kernel. He added, quite dryly, that he didn't want to take advantage of the man's pride. At this, the man's face turned a shade of green. The man realized he had dug his own grave. He had come to school the owner, but instead, he was the one being taught a lesson. Gritting his teeth, the man admitted defeat, acknowledging that despite his years of experience, the reservoir owner had outsmarted him. He confessed that he had been played before he even caught a real fish. He then agreed to buy 2 kernels at the promised price. The man pulled out his phone, scanned the code to pay 400 yuan, and walked away with his 2 precious kernels of corn. Meanwhile, we see our protagonist adjusting his float. Since coulters aren't bottom feeders and love movement, he had a specific plan in mind. He knew he had to bait the area while fishing to keep them interested. Soon, he was settled into his chair, ready for the night. He equipped his float with a luminous battery and prepared his 7-meter rod, a sturdy piece of equipment for the task at hand. His line setup was precise, using barbless double hooks. To be honest, he was treating this with the focus of a true professional. After baiting the hooks with fresh corn, he cast his line into the dark water and calmly lit a cigarette to pass the time. The trick with the corn was not to crush it, but to squeeze it just enough so that the juices would slightly leak out. This ensured the scent would spread better in the water. Nearby, the older man had also switched to corn and was waiting for a bite. As they waited, Bai Yunhai sent our protagonist a message, inviting him into a massive group chat filled with over 500 local anglers. The moment he sent a greeting, the chat room erupted. It seemed his reputation had preceded him among the fishing community. The messages flew by, with people recognizing him as the owner of the Yulong Village Reservoir. He was becoming quite a local celebrity. Some joked that of all the owners, he was the most cunning, filling his pit with pesky bait stealers to challenge even the best fishermen. He immediately denied the cunning label in the chat, typing out a unified reply welcoming all fellow anglers to return to the Yulong Village Reservoir. Just as he sent the message, his luminous float flickered twice. He instantly became alert, his eyes narrowing as he watched the dark water. Unfortunately, there was no follow-up bite, but just then, he heard the older man nearby let out a sudden, sharp shout of excitement. With a loud whistle of the rod cutting through the air, our protagonist looked over to see the man's fishing rod bent into a deep, straining arc. While struggling to control the fish, the man shouted happily that he'd only thrown in 2 scoops of corn before getting a bite. He praised the reservoir, certain he had hooked a coulter, even if it felt a bit small. As he spoke, the fish finally broke the surface. A coulter weighing about 1 kilogram was pulled up. Our protagonist started to congratulate him, but at that exact moment, his own float flickered. The float dipped twice and then vanished completely in a black drift. He reacted with lightning speed, jerking the rod upward to set the hook. The next second, the air was filled with the sharp, rhythmic whistling of the main line. He gripped the rod with both hands, feeling the immense tension. The sound of the line cutting the wind made him feel completely alive. To be honest, this kind of struggle is pure bliss for any fisherman. That specific wailing sound made by the line and rod is considered a masterpiece of music by those who live for the sport. The older man, having just put his own fish away, rushed over and told our protagonist to stay steady while he grabbed the landing net. Seeing the intensity of the fight, he picked up the net and stood ready. However, our protagonist had a slightly different priority in mind. He pulled out his phone and asked the man if he could record a video of the struggle first. The man nodded and quickly started filming. Even though it was dark, both men were wearing headlamps, so the scene was well lit enough to capture the action on camera. Although he had managed to get the rod upright, the whistling sound continued as the hooked coulter fought back with incredible strength. The fish began a powerful run to one side. Our protagonist had to stand up and follow it along the bank, holding the rod tight. Only when the initial burst of power faded did he dare use the figure-8 technique to start leading the fish back toward him. His line setup wasn't particularly heavy, so he knew that if he tried to force it, he risked the line snapping and losing the fish entirely. After wearing the fish down for a while, he prepared to step back and bring the catch into the shallows, hoping his equipment would hold. At that moment, the fish in the water suddenly surged with power again, this time lunging directly toward the distant surface. It dove diagonally downward, and seeing the fish still struggling so fiercely, our protagonist instinctively leaned forward to follow the movement. Just as he was about to lose his footing near the water, he braced himself, yet the fish continued its powerful run with a sharp whistling sound. The rod was pulled into a massive, straining arc, its tip nearly touching the water's surface as the entire frame vibrated. With every pulse of the fish's strength, the rod throbbed in his hands, a sensation that is, to be honest, pure bliss, despite the risk of the line snapping. In a battle like this, either the fish's strength eventually fades so the angler can regain control, or it simply snaps the line and vanishes. Fortunately, this particular fish wasn't an unstoppable monster. Its strength began to wane, allowing him to successfully take control once more. With the situation finally stabilized, he began to step back with the rod after a few minutes of careful maneuvering. The fish tried to bolt twice more during this process, but its power was spent, and he easily kept it under his command. As the body of the fish finally broke the surface, the older man couldn't help but shout that this one was much larger than his own. Our protagonist gave the signal, and the man quickly moved in with the landing net to scoop the prize out of the water. He hurriedly set down his rod to help secure the net and bring the catch onto the bank, estimating its weight at a glance. The older man pointed the camera at the coulter, marveling at the fact that while he'd seen many such fish, this one was special. He noted that the quality and appearance of this particular specimen were quite rare, something one doesn't see every day. The man even used his hand to measure the length, estimating the coulter to be roughly 76 centimeters long. Our protagonist then found his hand scale and weighed the fish right in front of the camera lens for the recording. His goal for the night was to catch a coulter weighing at least 5 kilograms, and the older man was now convinced such giants were indeed in these waters. After a quick cleanup, he placed the fish in the holding net and returned to his fishing chair, feeling thoroughly refreshed. He asked the man to send him the video, and as soon as he received it, he immediately shared it with the fishing group chat. Tucking his phone back into his pocket, he resumed his watch, eyes fixed on the float, while listening to the quiet night. As his phone began to buzz incessantly with WeChat notifications, he thought to himself that the fishing community was finally waking up. Soon, Wang Defa showed the black carp, its gills securely tied to Huang Mao. When Huang Mao saw the dark, massive shape of the fish, he was instantly shocked. "Good heavens, there really is a black carp this big," he exclaimed. "Quick, get it into the truck and start the oxygen pump, or it won't stay fresh for long." He repeated the urgency of getting the fish into the tank, knowing that once a fish like this dies, its value drops significantly. Without our protagonist even having to lift a finger, Huang Mao pulled an electronic scale from his van. Then, he and Wang Defa worked together to lift the fish onto the scale. After confirming the black carp weighed exactly 31 pounds and 6 ounces, Huang Mao's voice trembled with excitement. "Brotherly, your luck is simply legendary," he shouted. "To catch a top-tier specimen like this, I truly have to hand it to you." Huang Mao circled the fish several times, looking and touching it in disbelief. He decided right then to resell it to a high-end hotel for a handsome profit. Our protagonist simply gave a calm smile upon hearing Huang Mao's plan, showing no sign of the excitement the others felt. He told Huang Mao to calculate the price quickly and handle the fish, noting that the hook had injured its mouth and he wasn't sure how long it would survive. Hearing this, Huang Mao thought for a moment and spoke directly to Li. "Brotherly, considering the quality and size of this wild black carp, I can give you 25 per pound. What do you think?" At this offer, our protagonist couldn't help but smile. It seemed young Huang Mao was being quite fair. To be honest, the market price for an average black carp is usually only 15 per pound. Given that the fish was already injured, offering 25 per pound meant Huang Mao certainly wasn't trying to cheat him. In the end, Huang Mao paid him a total of 800 yuan. Originally, he had estimated the catch would only fetch 400 or 500, so 800 was well beyond his expectations. After happily completing the transfer, Huang Mao started his van and drove off to deliver the massive carp. Meanwhile, the drone in the sky descended a bit lower, clearly capturing the entire transaction. It even transmitted the group's conversation directly back to the live stream. The viewers online were once again in an uproar. "My goodness, that handsome guy just Sold one fish for 800. That's 3 days worth of my salary. To which another viewer replied that there was no need for such surprise. If the fish hadn't been injured, it could have easily fetched 1,000 yuan. In this region, a wild black carp weighing over 30 pounds is a prize people fight over. Meanwhile, as Wang Defa saw the 800 yuan hit the phone's balance, he was genuinely happy for his friend. Old Lee, we really hit the jackpot today, he cheered. Believing that good fortune should be shared, our protagonist sent 400 yuan to Fatty Wang. After all, without that rod, landing such a monster would have been impossible. However, when Wang Defa saw the transfer, he didn't accept it. Instead, he immediately hit the refund button. Old Lee, what are you doing? Defa asked firmly. I absolutely cannot take this money. Hearing this, Lee sent the transfer once more, patiently, explaining to Defa that while he caught the fish, Defa's help with the netting was crucial. Everyone should profit together. He jokingly commanded Defa to take the money, or else he wouldn't be allowed on future trips. Faced with this, Defa finally accepted, shouting that Lee was truly his benefactor. I have no way to repay you, so I'll perform a song for you right now. Defa cleared his throat, preparing to belt out a tribute to his father. Lee quickly cut off the impending noise attack. This comedic scene left the livestream viewers in stitches, with comments flooding in about how entertaining these two were. But amidst the joking, Lee's former apprentice from his old job called him. When he answered, Young Chen spoke with pure excitement. You and Brother Wang are on TV. Just now, tens of thousands of people in the live stream were watching you wrestle that black carp. It was incredible entertainment. Hearing this, Lee was completely stunned. He instinctively looked up at the drone circling in the sky, and suddenly, it all clicked. That drone hadn't just been wandering. It had been broadcasting their every move. Beside him, Wang Defa had already pulled up the official Nanjing livestream. Clutching his phone with trembling hands, he cursed in shock. Old Lee, it's true. They're streaming us fishing, and there are 30,000 people watching right now. Are we famous now? Fatty Wang asked. Hearing this, Lee let out a calm, bitter laugh and scolded his friend. Famous? More like a laughingstock. Fatty, have you forgotten? Just a moment ago, you were relieving yourself by the river. That was definitely broadcast live. At this, Wang's face turned beet red, but only for 2 seconds. He joked that if they saw him, every man in the chat would feel incredibly insecure. Just then, the drone descended lower. Suddenly, a female host's voice crackled through the drone's built-in speaker. Hello, fellow anglers. I am the host of Beautiful Nanjing from the Nanjing Media Center. Would it be convenient for you to accept a brief interview? She asked. To be honest, this was quite unexpected. Lee and Wang Defa exchanged a look of pure shock. It was just fishing. Why was official media involved? Wang, a new media major, whispered urgently. Old Lee, this is a golden opportunity to get famous. We don't know the benefits yet, but building a reputation now might be useful later, he reasoned. Lee felt a spark of interest. While he couldn't reveal his system, he realized he could use this chance to build a persona as a master angler. Meanwhile, the live stream chat was exploding. These two are hilarious. Subscribed. Tomorrow I'm bringing my gear to find these two legends, the fans wrote. The host began her interview, asking about Lee's fishing insights and his mental journey during the struggle with the giant fish. Lee began spinning a tale, mixing technical jargon about fishing spots and bait ratios. Wang Defa played the perfect wingman, praising Lee's legendary bait-mixing skills. He claimed the bait smelled so good that even he wanted to eat a few pounds of it. This absurdity sent the chat into fits of laughter. The interview lasted about 5 or 6 minutes before finally wrapping up. Thanks to their chemistry, the stream's popularity surged. Lee even noticed several fishing gear manufacturers asking for their contact information to discuss brand collaborations. At this, he seemed to realize something. He saw a future path that seemed even wider than the Qinglong River itself. Of course, all of this was only possible because of his Fishing King system. Once the live stream ended, Fatty Wang immediately switched back into his professional new media persona. He told Lee that they needed to strike while the iron was hot to build a personal brand, and he even had an ID already picked out, the Liver-Bursting Brothers. His plan was simple. Lee would handle the technical skills and research, while he would focus on the comedy and making Lee look good. Lee considered the proposal and realized it was actually quite feasible. Since the system provided a steady income anyway, the internet fame was just a side project. If it took off, that was great. If not, he lost nothing. He told Fatty he would register the account that night. But since it was only 1 in the afternoon, he wanted to go home first to grab a rod and keep fishing. Fatty Wang, hearing this, immediately offered to have Huang Mao deliver a rod so Lee wouldn't have to travel. But Lee refused because, with plenty of points now, he planned to buy a professional set of gear directly from the system shop. And so, he hopped on his electric scooter and headed home. His heart was racing with excitement along the way, not just because he had accidentally become famous, but because of the cold, hard cash he had earned. Between the system's morning payout of 800 and the afternoon's 1,580, plus Huang Mao's purchase of nearly 6,700, his total earnings for the day had reached a staggering 9,060. To be honest, that is a very good day's work. He recalculated the cash from the system's morning and afternoon payouts, confirming the impressive totals from Huang Mao's generous purchase. 20 minutes later, he arrived home in high spirits and opened the door, only to find the house empty. A quick check of his phone revealed a message from his wife, saying she had taken their daughter to visit her parents for the day. Taking advantage of the privacy, he immediately opened the system interface. First, he upgraded his fishing rank from angler to fishing master. This upgrade granted him a 20% chance to receive double cash rewards. Next, he opened the equipment section of the system mall and prepared to spend 1,700 points. He spent his points on a new arsenal of gear, including a beginner hand rod that reduces physical strain by 20% and can handle fish up to 80 pounds. The rod was guaranteed never to snap. He also picked up a beginner lure rod that increases attraction for predatory fish by 50%. This rod improved casting distance by 20% and came equipped with a tangle-free bait casting reel, ensuring the movement of the lures appeared even more lifelike. Next was the beginner fishing line, 200 millimeters of abrasion-resistant, flexible material with enhanced invisibility. He added stone axe, beginner hooks, which boasted a 100% hookup rate and resisted bending. Finally, he chose a beginner fishing box with a 29-liter capacity, built-in insulation, and a comfortable seat that even allowed for slight stamina recovery. After reviewing the descriptions of this impressive gear and seeing as the house was empty, he decided to withdraw the entire collection at once. Since he didn't need the lure rod or the box just yet, he only took the hand rod, the line, and the hooks as he headed out. On his way, he ran into Go-Gu, a well-known local from Yulong Village. Just then, Bai Yunhai arrived from the city with a delivery of supplies and asked Li to help unload the car. Seeing an opportunity, Li decided to recruit Go-Gu to help him manage the reservoir. He turned to him and said, "Go-Gu, come help me move some things. From today on, I'll cover your cigarettes and your meals." Hearing the promise of food and smokes, Go-Gu immediately nodded and followed him to the car. Not long after, as Li and Go-Gu reached the road, Bai Yunhai took one look at Go-Gu and pulled Li aside to ask a question. "Li Mu, what's the deal with your friend? He seems a bit simple." Li simply reminded him that this was Go-Gu, a staple of Yulong Village. Bai Yunhai then opened the trunk, revealing a gas stove, pots, pans, and various other supplies he had brought along. As they moved everything out of the car, Li casually tossed 2 packs of cigarettes to Go-Gu as a down payment for his help. He instructed him to go watch the others fish by the reservoir, provided he didn't disturb them, and promised to call him when it was time to eat. Go-Gu, clutching his cigarettes with a wide grin, nodded happily and skipped off toward the water to watch the other anglers. Meanwhile, Li spent some time organizing his new supplies in the old house. Once everything was in its place, he picked up his phone and called Sister Yulan, asking her to bring some ingredients over to the old house to cook dinner. She mentioned that today she planned to prepare a full fish banquet for the anglers, featuring fried stone Morocco, braised gobies, tofu stew with bitterlings, and steamed topmouth coulters. Li Mu readily agreed to the menu, knowing that the fish produced by the system tasted divine. He realized that if these veteran fishermen tasted such delicious food, it would boost the reservoir's reputation, and word of mouth would naturally attract even more people to come and cast their lines. With the dinner plans settled, he headed down to the reservoir and spotted Bai Yunhai already settled into a fishing spot. It immediately occurred to him that this fellow hadn't actually paid his fishing fee yet. He walked over and questioned him, asking if he was really planning to start fishing without paying up. Bai Yunhai cursed in annoyance, asking Li Mu if he was seriously going to charge him money after he had just delivered so many supplies from the city. He asked if Li Mu had any conscience left at all. In response, Li Mu scoffed and told Bai Yunhai he had some nerve mentioning a conscience, reminding him of all the times he had been swindled in the past. To be honest, their history was a bit complicated. There was a time when Li Mu was buying a new rod from Bai Yunhai's shop almost every week, and Bai had even let him to fish in the river during the closed season. As a result, several of his rods had been confiscated by the authorities. Hearing this reminder, Bai Yunhai's expression turned uncharacteristically serious. He agreed to pay the fee, declaring that he would definitely catch enough fish today to make Li Mu regret his stinginess when it came time to sell them back. He told Li Mu to prepare to cry later, then pulled out his phone and scanned the code to pay the 500 yuan fishing fee. Li Mu just chuckled, knowing Bai Yunhai's usual tricks all too well. He told him he wasn't afraid of whatever master plan he had in mind for the day. He challenged him to see who would come out on top, but Bai Yunhai simply gave a wicked grin, claiming he had a secret weapon for a guaranteed victory. While Li Mu wondered what this supposed secret weapon could possibly be, the man reached into his bag and pulled out, of all things, an incense burner. He lit 3 sticks of incense, placed them in the burner, and then pressed his hands together in a gesture of deep prayer. A string of solemn, rhythmic chants began to flow from his mouth, calling upon the heavens and the earth to bless this specific fishing spot. He chanted for smooth sailing on the first cast, for the dragon's luck on the second, and for the sun's favor on the third. It was quite a performance. Bai Yunhai continued his ritualistic counting all the way from 1 to 10, seeking total perfection, before bowing deeply to the incense burner 3 times. He finished by muttering that the blessing was complete and that today would bring nothing but great fortune and a massive haul of fish. He seemed determined to bankrupt the fishery and take home a massive haul. This scene left Li Mu completely stunned, realizing that this fellow had actually turned to metaphysics for his fishing. Every other angler on the shore had their eyes fixed on Bai Yunhai, and we can imagine They were all looking at him, as if he were a complete fool. Even Brother Go watched from a distance, looking as if he'd found a kindred spirit. Limu felt that standing next to Bai Yunhai might make people think he was crazy too, so he quickly turned to walk away. Even so, one angler couldn't resist running over to ask if that sorcerer over there was a friend of the boss. Limu shook his head immediately, insisting he didn't know the man. However, an experienced fisherman nearby recognized Bai Yunhai. He noted it was the owner of the Wang Wang fishing shop in town, remarking that he hadn't expected the man's skills to reach such a spiritual level. Limu privately thought that if Bai Yunhai wanted to commit to the act, he should buy a Taoist robe and a wooden sword online. At least then he would look the part of a true exorcist. With no new customers arriving for the moment, things settled into a quiet rhythm. We see Limu begin his rounds, patrolling the reservoir. Including Bai Yunhai, there were now 42 people casting their lines into the water. As he walked, he eventually found a female angler in a secluded spot, wearing a sun hat and protective sleeves to guard against the heat. Beside her, a smartphone was set up on a tripod for a live stream. To be honest, it was a professional-looking setup for such a remote spot. He struck up a conversation, asking if she was a fishing streamer and how many followers she had managed to attract. She smiled and told him she had only started recently, with just over 10,000 followers on her account so far. Noticing she was using standard powdered bait, Limu kindly warned her that the reservoir was full of small, pesky fish like bitterlings and gobies. He suggested that if she wanted to catch the larger topmouth coulters, corn would be a much better choice for her hook. Otherwise, the small fish would devour the powdered bait before anything big could bite. Surprisingly, she didn't seem to mind at all. She told him she was happy to catch anything, and that her viewers were actually curious to see just how big the local super bitterlings really were. She then asked if Limu would mind saying hello to her audience on the stream. Naturally, he was more than happy to oblige. Even though she was still a small-time influencer, any publicity was good for business, so he stepped forward with a cheerful smile. He stepped in front of the phone and gave the camera a friendly wave, introducing himself as the owner of the Yulong Village Reservoir in Dadong Town. He explained that this was a newly opened, large-scale natural fishing ground, home not only to giant bitterlings and other common varieties, but also to wild topmouth coulters weighing over 20 pounds, inviting everyone to visit. As he spoke, we see the live stream chat begin to move. The 98 viewers in the room started firing off comments, laughing at how the boss had turned a simple greeting into a blatant advertisement. Some skeptics claimed he was surely exaggerating, insisting that topmouth coulters over 20 pounds simply didn't exist in any domestic fishing grounds. Others ignored the fish entirely, asking Limu to confirm if the streamer was just as beautiful in real life as she appeared on screen. While they were chatting, two other anglers nearby actually managed to land massive coulters over 10 pounds. Seeing such impressive catches, the other fishermen were filled with renewed anticipation. Noticing that lunchtime was approaching, Limu instructed Brother Go to head back to the village and bring Sister Yulan over to help cook. Brother Go left happily, but just then, a woman's scream pierced the air. The streamer shouted that she had hooked a fish, but a second later, there was a loud splash followed by a desperate cry for help. She cried out for the boss, shouting that the fish had pulled her right into the water. Limu spun around toward the sound of the commotion. He saw the female streamer struggling in the reservoir, splashing frantically. Reacting instantly, he rushed over and grabbed a nearby landing net. He extended it toward her, and since she was still close to the shore, she was able to grab hold so he could pull her back to safety. Nearby anglers quickly gathered to see what had happened. The streamer looked utterly embarrassed, standing there soaked to the bone. Her wet clothes clung to her, but fortunately, she had been rescued quickly and was unharmed, aside from swallowing a bit of reservoir water. She gave a sheepish thank you to Limu, looking quite awkward as she began to wring out her clothes and fix her messy hair. Once she had composed herself a little, she looked out at the water and asked if there were perhaps other types of fish in the reservoir. She admitted she wasn't an expert at playing a fish, but she was certain that whatever was on her line must have weighed at least 30 or 40 pounds. Limu was stunned by this claim. After all, the theoretical limit for a topmouth coulter is usually around 20 pounds. Finding one that large would be a world-class miracle, and he privately wondered if her lack of skill had simply made the fish feel much heavier. After reminding the female streamer to be more careful, we see Limu head over to the lakeside to begin preparing lunch. By the time noon rolled around, the meal was nearly ready, but the 33 anglers who had arrived early that morning had already been at it for 5 hours, and almost all of them were catching and releasing fish. Suddenly, that same streamer let out another piercing scream, shouting about a massive fish. Everyone instantly turned their heads toward the water, where the surface was churning with massive splashes. A lean, tanned man was clinging to his rod, struggling with all his might to control the catch. Many onlookers pulled out their phones to record the scene, shouting that this one had to be at least 20 pounds and urging him to hold steady. The commotion was far more intense than anything seen earlier that morning, and the crowd warned him not to let the line snap. They shouted for someone to bring a safety rope or a net, even suggesting specific techniques to help him land the beast. The streamer was right there alongside them, cheering him on and excitedly mentioning that her live stream had already reached 1,000 viewers. Limu realized that if this man actually managed to land a 20-pound topmouth coulter, the Yulong village reservoir would become a national sensation. After all, among the millions of anglers in the country, those who have actually seen a coulter that size are few and far between. Even a 10-pounder is something most people have only ever seen in photos on the internet. But judging by the sheer force of the struggle and the brief glimpse of its silhouette in the water, this truly could be a monster weighing over 20 pounds. Limu felt a surge of excitement as he recorded the video, while the streamer beside him was practically buzzing. Her audience was growing rapidly, providing the reservoir with the kind of publicity money simply can't buy. The comments on her screen were flying by at a frantic pace, with viewers just as thrilled as the fishermen standing on the shore. With a low grunt of effort from the man, the fish surged again, and the sound of the fishing line slicing through the air rang out with a sharp, rhythmic whistle. It was a beautiful sound to any fisherman, a melody of high stakes and raw power. Everyone present was energized, their eyes shining with envy and excitement, as if they wished they were the ones holding that rod. Limu watched closely, noting that the man's technique for playing the fish seemed to be a specialized style used by seasoned veterans. We see that this veteran's technique is quite similar to the rod-hugging method, which means one shouldn't cast a full line so that after hooking a fish, you can simply hug the rod and stay still, letting the fish exhaust itself in the water. Of course, this method requires a keen eye for detail. While it's called staying still, you must actually move along the shore as the fish lunges left and right. To be honest, it's quite a workout. It shares a lot in common with the figure-8 technique. In fact, most high-level methods are connected, including the famous Master Chui's side-to-side swing or evenly Da Mao's battlefield shifting maneuver. They all aim for the same result, really. Finally, after 10 grueling minutes, our lean friend stabilized his position. He hugged the rod tight and began to step back slowly. As the fish finally broke the surface near the bank, the surrounding anglers caught their first real look at the massive topmouth coulter. The crowd erupted in disbelief, shouting about how impossibly large it was. It was, by all accounts, an absolute beast of a catch. Voices called out for someone to help net it, but everyone hesitated. After all, if you mess up a catch like this, the owner might never forgive you. Some looked toward Limu to help, but he was busy recording the moment. Just as he was about to suggest someone else step up, Bai Yunhai unexpectedly volunteered. He stepped out from the crowd and picked up the veteran fisherman's oversized landing net. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd and a dozen smartphone cameras, Yunhai approached the water's edge and spoke to the fisherman. He told the man he was ready and instructed him exactly when to slacken the line. The lean man nodded, his focus entirely on the water. They waited a few more moments to ensure the fish was truly spent. Finally, feeling the time was right, the fisherman gave the signal. He called out for Yunhai to net the fish now. It turns out that Yunhai's fishing skills were just as impressive as his sun-darkened skin suggested. As soon as the head and half the body were inside the net, the crowd surged forward to get a better look at the prize. Limu and the female streamer rushed over as well. The fisherman, overcome with excitement, dropped his rod and ran to help lift the net. He and Yunhai grabbed the iron ring of the net together, preparing to hoist the massive creature out of its watery home. But then, something happened that no one could have predicted. The bottom of the net suddenly gave way, tearing wide open. With one powerful thrash of its body, the giant coulter slipped straight through the hole in the net and plummeted back toward the depths. The fish vanished into the water in the blink of an eye. Our lean friend instinctively lunged forward, trying to grab the main line that was still attached to the hook. It was a dangerous move, as the line could easily slice through his hand, but it was all in vain anyway. The hook had already slipped free. At that moment, the entire scene fell into a terrifying silence. Bai Yunhai and the fisherman remained frozen, both still clutching the rim of the broken net. The two of them looked up and stared at each other in disbelief for a good 10 seconds. Around them, every single spectator seemed just as paralyzed. It was as if they had all been struck by a freezing spell, staring blankly at the pair by the water. Limu was the first to snap out of it, though he felt like fainting. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of cheap net the man was using. A 20-pound coulter was practically on the shore, and yet it still managed to escape. As soon as those words were spoken, the spell broke, and every fisherman on the bank let out a simultaneous groan of shared agony. Tears nearly welled up in the lean man's eyes. He explained that because his rods were so expensive, he had tried to save money by buying a generic, off-brand net. It was a painful lesson, to be sure. Knowing that no words could truly comfort the poor man, Limu returned to the business of processing the caught fish. The rules were simple, 100 yuan an hour with a 5-hour minimum, and the pond would buy back the fish at 3 yuan per pound. Anglers could only take home one fish under 10 pounds, and naturally, any fish taken home couldn't be sold back for cash. With the help of Brother Go and the other anglers, Limu quickly finished the buybacks. A few lucky souls had actually managed to turn a profit. Most, however, hadn't quite broken even. But for these dedicated fishermen, a lack of profit was met only with a brief sigh of regret and nothing more. They were here for the sport, after all. As for the total earnings from this wave, Limu decided to wait until the end of the day to do the final math. Once the fish from the 33 anglers were processed, we see that Yang Yulan had finished preparing the meal. Limu called everyone over to line up. The atmosphere brightened considerably as the food was served. It seems a good meal is the perfect remedy for a day of near misses and broken nets. The men found Yulan's graceful presence quite refreshing, but it was the taste of the fish that truly caught them off guard. Their eyes lit up as they tasted the fried whitebait and gobies. One angler remarked that while he'd had fried fish before, this was on another level. The flavor of the fried fish was incredible, and the steamed coulter was even better, a true testament to the quality of wild-caught fish. One man joked that the meal alone was worth 100 yuan, and since he'd sold back 300 yuan in fish, he'd technically come out ahead. As the compliments poured in, one angler turned to Yang Yulan and told her the food was delicious, asking if he could have just a little more. As the chef of the day, Yulan felt a deep sense of satisfaction, and being called sister by the guests certainly didn't hurt her mood. She told them to eat their fill, promising that once everyone had been served, any leftovers would be distributed fairly among the group. She also reminded them to be mindful of their trash, asking everyone to bring their waste over to her side for proper disposal. Limu told Brother Go that if he was still hungry, he should go see Aunt Yulan for seconds, and the man simply looked up with a silly, happy grin. Meanwhile, Bai Yunhai had found a comfortable rock to sit on, balancing his phone on his lap to watch videos while he ate. He asked Limu whether it was Yulan's cooking or the quality of the fish that made the meal so good, and Limu could only offer a knowing smile. Yunhai declared the taste was absolutely incredible, deciding right then and there that he had to take some home for his wife and children to try. On the other side of the crowd, our lean friend was also eating, but while everyone else was savoring the flavors, he seemed elsewhere. For him, the meal tasted somewhat bitter, as he simply couldn't stop thinking about that massive coulter that had slipped through his fingers. To be honest, no delicacy can truly cure the heartbreak of the one that got away. Soon, the anglers finished their meal and returned to their spots. While Brother Go helped Yulan clean up the area, Limu was surprised to notice something unexpected about the group. Even though their sessions were technically over, fewer than 5 people had actually left. The rest seemed to have no intention of moving. We have to wonder if they were waiting for the evening bite, or if they were simply hoping to stick around long enough to snag another free meal. As Yunhai went back to his rod, Limu sat down and began scrolling through his phone, quickly coming across a new video from Feng Yin. This particular episode was filmed right here at the Yulong Village Reservoir, starting from their first meeting back in the town. Upon arriving at the village, they headed to the back bay to fish, though Feng Yin quickly began to suspect he'd been played. He couldn't help but grumble about the situation. But then the footage showed the sudden appearance of the giant whitebait, crabs, and gobies, building up to a very impressive finale. The editing made the reality look even more exciting than it was. Limu checked the comments and found them filled with shock and awe. Viewers were stunned by the size of the catch, leaving endless comments of no way and incredible, though a few skeptics remained. The comments argued that such fish couldn't possibly exist elsewhere, and it was clear this viral hit would bring Feng Yin massive traffic. While his follower count was sure to skyrocket, Limu noticed something frustrating. Not once in the entire video was Yulong Village mentioned. He remembered specifically mentioning the name to the camera several times, yet every single instance had been scrubbed away in post-production. Feeling a bit speechless, he decided to take matters into his own hands by updating his profile to Yulong Village Reservoir Boss. After marking the exact address in Dadong Town, Limu went straight to Feng Yin's video to leave a very strategic comment. He introduced himself as the owner of the reservoir seen in the footage, boasting not just about the stunning natural scenery and comfort, but also about the incredible variety of wild giants lurking beneath the surface of the water. He explained that the giant whitebait and crabs were just the tip of the iceberg, mentioning that an angler had just landed a 20-pound coulter. He invited everyone to check his own videos for proof and welcomed them to Yulong Village. Then, he hit the upload button. He posted the clip of our lean friend struggling with that massive fish, certain that the reservoir was about to trigger a brand new craze. After finishing his digital marketing, he realized that 33 people had already completed their fishing sessions for the day. This number far exceeded the system's goal of 20 customers, which meant he had earned yet another opportunity to upgrade. But just as he was about to check in with the system, Bai Yunhai came trotting over with that familiar, mischievous energy. He told Limu that while the reservoir was clearly making money now, he had a plan to make even more of it. Limu gave him a skeptical look, asking what kind of scheme he was cooking up this time, and Yunhai simply chuckled. Since he owned a fishing gear shop, he suggested that with the growing crowds, it was time to set up a proper stall on site. His idea was to bring in all sorts of equipment to sell right there by the water, covering all the initial inventory costs himself. He proposed a 50-50 split of the profits, pointing out that Limu would essentially be getting free money for doing nothing. Limu gave it some serious thought. It was a tempting offer, though he took slight offense at the idea of it being free money. After all, he was the one providing the customers, and with his growing popularity, he could easily source the gear himself. He wondered why he should let Bai Yunhai walk away with half the profits when he could source the gear himself. So, he told Yunhai straight out what he wanted. He was willing to cooperate, but only on a 70-30 split in his favor. Otherwise, he would simply contact the manufacturers directly. Bai Yunhai was aghast, accusing Li Mu of being far too greedy and trying to haggle for a 60-40 split instead. But Li Mu didn't give him the chance, simply turning to walk away. In this day and age, the one who controls the traffic is the one in charge. Since Yunhai wasn't the manufacturer and was only providing labor, Li Mu felt that taking 40 or 50% of the profit was simply out of the question. If they weren't friends, he would have done it all himself. After all, the number of anglers coming to this fishing ground was only going to increase. And that's not even mentioning the potential sales for bait and other supplies. The daily earnings would be substantial, especially since the retail margins on fishing bait are notoriously high. To be honest, it was a goldmine. Furthermore, items sold at the Yulong Village Reservoir could be priced slightly higher than in outside shops. Seeing Li Mu actually leaving, Yunhai panicked. He rushed forward to grab him, pleading for the 70-30 split, provided he could add one small condition to the deal. He asked if he could fish at the reservoir for free from now on. Seeing that the young man was being sincere, Li Mu finally gave him a nod. We see that the thrill of building a business is truly exhilarating, especially when one happens to have a magical system helping out. Now he had a new revenue stream that also provided convenience for his fellow anglers. It was, as they say, a win-win situation. The feeling of sitting back and waiting for money to roll in without lifting a finger was certainly pleasant. However, his ambitions were much larger. To transform Yulong Village Reservoir into a national holy land for leisure fishing, he knew he would eventually need to spend a fortune. He estimated it would take at least 10 to 20 million to reach his goal. He then asked Yunhai when he could bring the first batch of goods. Yunhai thought for a moment and promised to arrange everything that night so he could set up early the next morning. Li Mu nodded, then suggested that Yunhai should also sell drinks and snacks, proposing a 50-50 split for that specific category. He insisted on daily accounting, prompting Yunhai to call him a clever fox. It seems Li Mu wasn't going to miss a single penny. Yunhai had assumed Li Mu would overlook the small profits from beverages, but our protagonist had already planned several steps ahead. After discussing a few more business details, Bai Yunhai went back to his fishing. To be honest, he was in a rather good mood despite the tough negotiation. He realized he had just gained a high-quality sales channel without much extra effort. For him, this was essentially a gift falling right into his lap. He looked forward to the profits from the Yulong Village Reservoir, but mostly, he enjoyed being far away from his wife's watchful eye. This was his chance to build up a secret private fund, and at that thought, Yunhai's eyes practically sparkled as he sat back on his fishing box. He grandly tossed several scoops of bait into the water. Meanwhile, with the deal settled, Li Mu found a quiet spot to consult with his system once more. He asked if there was another opportunity for an upgrade, and the system immediately confirmed that there was indeed a chance available for the host. Li Mu considered the current state of the reservoir. While the fish varieties were decent, he felt the actual water surface area was still a bit too small. And so, he commanded the system to upgrade the reservoir's surface area. The system responded instantly, acknowledging the request to begin the expansion. As the upgrade processed, the system issued a new fishing mission. We see that the path to growth always requires meeting a few more specific conditions. The task required Li Mu to invite people to fish at the Yulong Village Reservoir at a rate of 100 yuan per hour, with a 5-hour minimum. Once 40 people had paid and started fishing, he would earn another upgrade opportunity. It was a straightforward challenge, but a challenge nonetheless. Li Mu was quite pleased with this new operational task. This time, the system hadn't raised the price. It had simply increased the required number of guests. With only 40 paying customers needed for the next upgrade, he estimated he could likely complete the mission by the end of the night. He felt relieved the system hadn't hiked the prices again so soon after the last increase, as that might have pushed his customers' patience too far. He decided that once he earned the next upgrade tonight, he would use it to improve the fish species. For now, expanding the water area was the right move. In his mind, the current size of the reservoir was simply insufficient. Currently, it sat at a modest 28.8 mu. After this upgrade, the area would expand significantly to 288 mu. There was another benefit to this expansion as well. With a larger surface area, the number of fish the system could generate would naturally be much higher than what a smaller pond could support. Li Mu knew he was about to be busy again. The anglers who had arrived earlier were reaching the end of their sessions, and their time was almost up. He called over Brother Go to help process the fish returns. Half an hour later, the atmosphere at the Yulong Village Reservoir was buzzing with activity. At the reservoir, Bai Yunhai was now the only one still fishing. Most of the other anglers hadn't left yet, though. Instead, they had gathered around him. They were all watching Yunhai fish with such intensity that a stranger might have mistaken him for some kind of famous internet celebrity. The female streamer's time was also up, and she made sure to wave goodbye, calling out a friendly farewell to the boss as she headed out. Li Mu smiled and welcomed her back for next time. Meanwhile, that thin, dark-skinned man who had lost the big fish earlier was still lingering nearby. Even though he'd lost that massive 20-pound coulter, he had still managed to turn a profit during the fish return process earlier. One had to admit, the man was a truly skilled angler. He was currently standing among the crowd surrounding Yunhai, looking much calmer than before. While he wasn't exactly overjoyed, he had certainly recovered his composure. Leaving the group, Li Mu hopped into his third-hand Mercedes and drove to Dadong town. His errand was quite simple. He needed to buy an inflatable boat and several life jackets. Safety first, as they say. With the water surface area expanding so rapidly, he needed to be ready to perform a rescue immediately should anyone accidentally fall in. The inflatable boat would also serve another practical purpose, cleaning up any trash floating on the water. After securing the boat, he moved on to his next task. He stopped at a print shop to have official QR codes made for WeChat and Alipay payments. On his way back, he checked in with Sister Yulan. He called her and picked up a large supply of cooking essentials, rice, oil, and salt, to bring back to the village for her. When he finally returned to the Haosan Bay Reservoir lugging the inflatable boat, Brother Go was quick to notice his boss's heavy load. The loyal man ran over immediately to take the supplies. Li Mu then reached into his bags and pulled out a special gift, a brand new set of clothes. He handed over the new shirt, pants, shoes, and socks, telling Brother Go to head home, take a shower, and get cleaned up. He instructed him to wear the new outfit tomorrow and report for duty at dawn every day from now on. Brother Go simply beamed, clutching his new clothes. Li Mu then set about inflating the boat, making sure it was properly prepared before placing it securely by the riverbank. Suddenly, someone called out, asking where the boss had been. It seemed Yunhai had just landed a massive coulter that nearly broke the 20-pound mark. The fish measured nearly 1.5 meters and weighed over 18 pounds. The crowd insisted on pulling it out of the net so the boss could see. Unable to resist the overwhelming urge to show off, Yunhai immediately stepped down from his fishing spot and hoisted the heavy net from the water. As the net rose, we see a single, massive fish inside, the very same one that measured nearly 1.5 meters long. At 18.8 pounds, this giant coulter made it clear that the one the dark-skinned man lost earlier really must have been over 20 pounds. Yunhai looked at Li Mu and laughed, announcing his plan to take the fish, hang it from the back of his car, and drive all the way to the county seat. He even joked about circling Binjiang Road 3 times just to show it off, asking Li Mu if he had any thoughts on the matter. To be honest, seeing such a massive coulter was a shock, but Li Mu reminded Yunhai of the rules he had established earlier. He firmly stated that anglers could only take one fish under 10 pounds, and besides, he hadn't even charged Yunhai for the extra fishing time yet. He told the young man to put it back in the reservoir immediately, warning him that if the fish died from being out of water, he couldn't afford the cost. The crowd burst into laughter at that, and before Yunhai could protest, they all pitched in to help move the fish. In a matter of seconds, they had the coulter out of the net and back into the water, leaving only a few fading ripples behind. Yunhai looked devastated. Others had taken photos of the catch, but he hadn't managed to get one himself yet. Asking others for their photos was an option, of course, but it lacked the prestige of actually holding the prize in his own arms. As the crowd grew, the atmosphere became incredibly lively, and soon, more people were lining up to pay their fees and start fishing. Li Mu found himself busy once again as a steady stream of new anglers began to arrive at the reservoir. Every newcomer arrived wearing a look of pure excitement and anticipation, leaving Li Mu to spend his time collecting fees and welcoming guests. By 7 in the evening, while there was still a bit of light, Yang Yulan had already started cooking dinner by the water's edge. At this point, the number of anglers at the reservoir had reached about 80, with another dozen or so people just watching. These spectators had rushed over after work just to see the action, and it seemed likely they would join in before 8 o'clock. Li Mu felt a surge of excitement. Even without counting the morning and late-night crowds, having 80 people present was a major milestone. With each person paying a 500 yuan fee, he had collected roughly 40,000 yuan, a staggering amount for a single day. Of course, the actual profit wasn't quite that high yet, as none of these 80 people had returned any fish for a refund. While a few people had already left, the crowd remained quite large, so Li Mu decided to wait until everyone was gone for the night. He wanted to calculate the day's exact income and see just how much he had earned, while making sure to thank Yulan for her hard work. Sensing they needed to prepare dinner for 100 people, he suggested go help her, but Yang Yulan wouldn't hear of it. She insisted it was no trouble at all, telling Li Mu that she preferred to stay busy so she could feel she truly earned her wages. She planned to serve dinner in 2 shifts and would send Go to notify him. Li Mu nodded, though his mind was already elsewhere. He was realizing that even with Go's help, he would soon need to hire more staff as he set off to patrol the reservoir once more. His round served 3 purposes: reminding anglers to stay safe, ensuring they didn't leave trash behind, and preventing any rule breaking. Patrolling was essential to keep things orderly, and along the way, he made sure to greet the familiar faces he recognized. He handed out cigarettes to the older men and the dark-skinned brother, as well as those who proactively called out to greet him. The regulars were all busy fishing, but as Li Mu completed his circuit, he noticed something slightly unusual among the 80 anglers. Aside from a few wealthy eccentrics hunting for rare species, almost everyone else was using corn to target the coulters. However, we see that nearly half of those targeting culters were using crushed stones as their dynamic bait to attract the fish. Most of them were from the morning group, and it seemed they had all adopted the clever trick invented by the dark-skinned man. On the surface, using stones as bait didn't seem like a problem, as it didn't guarantee that everyone would suddenly become an expert. After all, fishing always depends on a mix of skill, luck, and choosing the right spot, regardless of the method one uses. But after finishing his walk, Limu realized this was becoming a significant issue that he hadn't quite anticipated. If every future angler started using small stones to lure the culters, the impact on his business would be quite substantial indeed.